You ever hear about those jobs that sound way too good to be true? The kind of thing you see in a sketchy Craigslist ad posted in the early morning hours with just enough info to hook you and just enough mystery to make your stomach twist? That was this job. I'd just lost my place in Baton Rouge after missing rent 2 months in a row. My girlfriend was gone, my car was 2 weeks from repossession, and I was living out of a storage unit with my last $73 stuffed in a plastic Folgers coffee can. I was scrolling through gig listings on my dying phone when I saw the ad. Night cleaner needed, historic cruise ship, $500/night, no experience required, discretion, report in person, interviews on site. Come alone. There was a phone number and a location, an address along the river near a forgotten dockyard outside Lafayette. I clicked the number. It rang once. Then a man answered with a voice like gravel and whiskey. "You saw the posting?" "Yeah," I said. "Still looking for someone?" "Always." "Be here by 11:30 tonight. Bring nothing but yourself. If you're late, you're out." Then he hung up. No questions, no forms, no background check, just a meeting. It rained that night. I had to borrow my cousin's bike to get there, pedaling 12 miles through muggy bayou backroads while mosquitoes feasted on my arms. My clothes were soaked by the time I arrived. The place was even more decrepit than I expected. The dock creaked like brittle bone under my shoes, every plank warped and blistered by time. Moss and lichen curled up between the gaps, and the whole place smelled like rotting wood and diesel fuel. But then I saw it. The cruise ship. The Celestia. She was massive. Far bigger than I thought a ship this old would be. Her hull was a dull grayish white, streaked with rust and mold, with ornate brass railings that had long lost their shine. Most of the windows were dark, but a few flickered with a dim golden glow like candlelight. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a handful of janitors, some floodlights, some signs of renovation. What I got was silence. No one on the dock, no tools, no trailers, no crew. Just a massive, rotting monument to a forgotten era of luxury, waiting. I hesitated at the gangplank. That's when I saw him. A man stepped into view at the top of the ramp. He wore a long black overcoat and an old-fashioned hat. He didn't wave or speak. He just stood there, motionless, staring down at me. The rain fell harder. I swallowed my nerves and climbed the gangplank. Up close, I could see that the man's coat wasn't just black. It was wet, soaked, but he didn't seem to care. He had an angular face, pale skin, and eyes the color of old milk, cloudy, glassy, like he hadn't blinked in hours. "You're Daniel Fay?" he asked. I nodded. He handed me a folded piece of paper, neatly laminated, and turned away without another word. No handshake, no interview, no small talk, just that piece of paper. It was titled, "Celestia Night Cleaning Protocol, Strict Compliance Required." Underneath were 12 rules. The rules: 1. Begin cleaning at exactly midnight, not before, not after. 2. You will hear music. Ignore it. 3. Do not open any cabin doors unless they're marked in red tape. 4. If you pass someone in the hallway, do not make eye contact. 5. Avoid all mirrors after 1 a.m. Cover them if necessary. 6. The ballroom is off limits. If the doors are open, shut them. 7. You may hear knocking from the cargo hold. Do not respond. 8 lights flickering once is fine. Twice means go to the main deck, immediately. 9. If someone offers you a drink, refuse no matter what. 10. Do not take anything from the ship, not even trash. 11. You must be off the ship by 5 a.m. If the clock strikes 5 and you're still on board, run. 12. Never speak to the captain. If he speaks to you, pretend you do not hear him. "Is this a joke?" I asked. The man just stared at me. I looked back at the ship. The doorway behind him was open now, revealing a narrow, dimly lit hallway that smelled of mildew and something else I couldn't name. I held the laminated sheet already soaked from the rain. He said, "If you're not serious, go now." And that was it. I stepped onto the ship. The floor shifted under me slightly. Not like a boat rocking on waves, more like something breathing. The inside of the Celestia was a mix of antique charm and grotesque decay. The chandeliers still hung overhead, but their light bulbs buzzed and pulsed like dying fireflies. Wallpaper peeled in long strips. The carpet was damp. Portraits of people I didn't recognize lined the halls, their eyes following me wherever I moved. There was no sign of renovation, no tools, no scaffolding, no work crews, just me, and that stale, old air full of whispers. At 11:55 p.m., I found the janitor's closet. Inside was a bucket, mop, some supplies that looked decades old, and a walkie-talkie sitting on top of a faded green duffel bag. I picked it up. The battery indicator blinked to life. Full charge. I heard a click. Then the man's voice came through. "Midnight, start in the dining hall, west wing." Then silence. I moved quickly, my shoes squelching on the damp floor. The Celestia's layout was like a maze, corridors looping into other corridors, stairwells that seemed to twist slightly the wrong way. The west wing was past the main lounge. As I passed through, I heard something. Music. A piano, faint but melodic. It sounded like it was coming from the ballroom. Rule 6, the ballroom is off limits. The doors were open, light spilled through. I didn't look. I kept walking. The dining hall was massive. Long wooden tables stretched wall to wall. Cobwebs hung like streamers from the chandeliers. The room smelled like old champagne and dust. I started wiping tables. The moment the clock on the wall struck 12, the lights flickered. Once, then stabilized. I cleaned in silence for 15 minutes. Then I saw movement in the corner of the room. A figure standing perfectly still. Back turned. I froze. They didn't move. Didn't speak. Didn't breathe. Just stood there, like they'd always been there. Rule 4, do not make eye contact. I looked away and continued cleaning. When I looked back, the figure was gone. At 12:30 a.m., I passed a mirror. My reflection wasn't moving. I was still, breathing. But the man in the glass smiled at me, then lifted a finger to his lips. Shh. I covered the mirror with a nearby tablecloth and walked away. By 1 a.m., I was back in the main hall. The lights flickered. Once, twice. Rule 8. I sprinted to the main deck. Outside, the wind had stopped. The Mississippi lay still like black glass. I stood there for 5 minutes. No explanation. No noise. Just silence. And when I turned around, the captain was standing at the doorway. Old Navy uniform, medals on his chest, face pale and sunken. He opened his mouth to speak. I shoved past him without a word and locked myself in the janitor's closet until 4:59 a.m. When I left the ship, Mr. Thorne was waiting at the dock. He handed me an envelope. Inside, $500 in crisp bills. He said nothing. Neither did I. But I knew I'd be back the next night. Because something about that ship, something about those rules, was calling me back. I should have taken the $500 and walked away. That was the smart thing to do. But smart choices had never really been my strong suit. And something about the ship, the way it loomed in the dark, like it had a pulse, like it had secrets it wanted to tell me, had sunk its hooks in me. I told myself I was just going back for the money. $500 a night? That's $2,000 a week. Life-changing for someone like me. But deep down, I think I already knew. It wasn't just about the money. The second night started the same way. Same rain. Same shadows. Same long walk up the creaking gangplank. Mr. Thorne was waiting at the top, motionless in the dark. He handed me a new laminated card. This one had a different set of rules stapled to it. Same heading. Strict compliance required. But only 6 rules this time. 1. Begin cleaning in the East Wing's observation lounge. Start at exactly midnight. 2. Do not enter any elevator, even if the door opens. 3. If the piano starts playing, find the nearest closet and hide. 4. Should you hear laughter behind you, do not run. Walk slowly. Count backward from 30. 5. Avoid looking out of any portholes between 1 and 2 a.m. 6. The captain may appear again. Do not speak. Do not nod. Do not acknowledge him in any way. My mouth went dry. This wasn't some boilerplate employee handbook. This was targeted, personalized, like the ship knew what I'd seen on the first night and was escalating. At 11:55 p.m. I entered the East Wing. The observation lounge was beautiful in its own way. Faded velvet benches, huge dome windows smeared with river mist, and a ceiling painted like the night sky. The stars glowed faintly in the dark. They shouldn't have, but they did. The air smelled wrong, like burnt sugar and iron. I waited until the clock hit 12 a.m. Then I began. Wiping down tables, sweeping up mildew-stained leaves and glass shards from broken sconces, I started to settle into the rhythm. I even hummed a little, trying to keep the creeping silence from swallowing me whole. But around 12:20, I heard a ding, like an elevator bell. I turned toward the hallway behind me, and sure enough, the doors to a brass elevator had slid open. No one inside. I stared at it. My skin went cold. Rule 2. Do not enter. I took a slow step backward. The light above the elevator turned red. Something flickered in the corner of the ceiling, like a shadow, dangling. I turned and walked away fast. At 12:38, I heard music. Not the distant hum I'd heard the night before. This was clearer, louder. A piano. The same haunting melody from before. Something slow and mournful, like a lullaby for the dead. Rule 3 kicked in. I dropped my mop, found the nearest storage closet, and slipped inside, pulling the door shut behind me. The moment I did, I heard footsteps. Bare feet slapping the floor. Slowly, deliberately. They passed just inches from the door. Then stopped. Right outside. I covered my mouth, breathing shallow. Then came the soft click of piano keys. Right outside the closet door. I don't know how long I stood there. Could have been 5 minutes, could have been an hour. Eventually the footsteps retreated and the music faded into silence. At 1:12 a.m. I felt a presence, not saw, not heard, felt. Something was behind me, close, breathing, watching. Then I heard it. Laughter. Not joyful, not even mocking. Wrong. Childlike and high-pitched, but slow, wet, like someone drowning and giggling at the same time. I froze. Rule 4. Count backward from 30. Walk slowly. Don't run. I started counting in my head. 30, 29, 28. Every step I took forward felt like walking through molasses. 24, 23. The laughter followed, closer. 17, 16, 15, and made it to the hallway junction. The lights above me buzzed and flickered. I didn't look back. At exactly 1:59 a.m., I reached the old map room, a place filled with vintage globes and maritime charts under dusty glass. I caught a glimpse of something in the reflection of a brass porthole. A face. Not mine. Pale, bloated, mouth hanging too wide, eyes sunken and brimming with river water. I shut my eyes and stepped away. Rule 5. Do not look out the portholes. I hadn't meant to, but now I was shaking. The Celestia wasn't just haunted. It was alive, watching, testing me. At 2:30 a.m. I returned to the main hallway and nearly ran straight into him. The captain. Same stiff uniform, same blank eyes, same waterlogged smell. He was standing in the middle of the hall, directly in my path. He raised his hand, 2 fingers extended, like a silent salute. I clenched my jaw and walked past him. Didn't speak, didn't nod. But as I passed, I heard him whisper something. Almost time. I didn't ask what he meant, didn't want to know. By 4:55 a.m., I was back in the janitor's closet, waiting for 5 a.m. The walkie crackled once, then came the voice. Mr. Thorne, good, you made it. Come up. He was waiting on the dock again with another envelope. This time, I spoke. What happened on this ship? He stared at me for a long moment. Then he said, there was a storm, a long time ago. The ship never made it back. He turned to leave, then added over his shoulder, some say it still hasn't. I told myself after the second night that I'd quit. No amount of cash was worth being stalked by phantom footsteps, creepy children's laughter, or a ghostly captain who whispered cryptic messages like some undead fortune cookie. But when the sun rose, and I found myself holding another thick envelope of cash, I hesitated. $500, again, neatly stacked, tied with twine, and tucked inside was something else this time. A short handwritten note. Come back tonight. Deck 3 needs attention. Use the surface stairs only. A new list of rules will be waiting. No signature, just a faint red smudge at the bottom, almost like a thumbprint. Or blood. I should have left it all there and walked away. But instead, I stuffed the cash in my coat and went home. That night, the weather had turned. A thick fog rolled in from the river, clinging to the dock like some living thing. As I approached the Celestia, her silhouette was barely visible, just the faint outline of the lifeboats and the rusted rails peeking through the gray. Mr. Thorne wasn't there this time. No greeting, no warning. Just the walkway creaking under my boots and the heavy groan of the ship accepting me once more. Inside the janitor's closet, taped to the wall, was the next set of rules. 1. Begin cleaning on Deck 3 at exactly 11:45 p.m. 2. Do not respond to voices calling your name. 3. If the hallway narrows behind you, do not turn around. 4. Do not touch the red doors. 5. At midnight, you may hear someone screaming. Do not try to help. 6. Avoid the ballroom, no matter what you hear coming from inside. 7. If you see someone who looks exactly like you, run. This list chilled me more than the last 2 combined, because it sounded like the ship wasn't just haunted, it was aware. I made my way to Deck 3 using the service stairs. The usual central stairwell had been blocked off with a chain and a sign that simply read, "Closed for repairs." The service stairs were narrow and old, lined with rotted wallpaper and flickering bulbs, and felt like I was descending into a throat. Deck 3 was eerily quiet. Too quiet. The air felt thicker down there, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. I started cleaning in the hallway near the old staterooms. Using the flashlight clipped to my shirt, I swept dust and broken glass, trying not to think about the rules. But at 11:55 p.m. I heard it. My name. Danny? A soft voice from somewhere behind me. Rule 2 hit me like a slap to the face. I didn't answer. Didn't even flinch, just kept wiping down a table, hands shaking. Danny, please, it's me. Don't leave me here. It sounded just like my sister, but she's been dead for 3 years. At midnight sharp, a piercing scream ripped through the hallway. Not a scream of pain, it was pure terror. It echoed down the corridor, through the pipes above me, making the lights flicker violently. My legs twitched. Instinct screamed to run toward it, but Rule 5, don't try to help. I pressed my back against the wall, breathing hard, waiting for it to stop. After a minute it did, but the silence that followed was worse. Around 12:30, I passed a series of ornate red doors. 3 of them, lined up in a row near what looked like the ballroom entrance. Their handles glistened like they were freshly polished. I didn't touch them, but I swear to you, the middle one breathed. I could see the wood pulsing, slow, rhythmic, and I heard something behind it. Whispers, low and fast, like a prayer in reverse. I backed away. Just as I turned the corner back toward the stairs, I saw something at the end of the hall, a figure. Not moving, just standing. And as I got closer, my stomach dropped. It was me. Same clothes, same boots, same exact face, except the eyes were all wrong, wide and glassy, like they'd been yanked from a mannequin. The mouth twitched. I bolted. I didn't wait for it to move, didn't follow protocol. I ran full speed down the hall, the walls narrowing behind me like a collapsing throat. The last thing I remember hearing before slamming the closet door behind me was, "You're not supposed to be here yet." When I got home that morning, I locked every door in my apartment, turned off my phone, and just sat on the couch, staring at the floor. Sleep didn't come, because every time I blinked, I saw me. That thing that looked like me on deck 3. Its vacant stare, the way its mouth had twitched like it was glitching. It hadn't chased me. It hadn't even moved. But something deep in my gut told me that if I'd taken one more step toward it, I wouldn't have been the one to leave the hallway. By sunset, my phone vibrated. No number, just a message. Tonight, the ballroom, rules in locker 7. That was it. I paced for nearly an hour, debating. I'd made it through 3 nights, but the deeper I went, the stranger it got. I knew the ship was doing more than just haunting me. It was testing me, seeing how far I'd go, how many rules I'd follow, and I hated to admit it, but some part of me wanted to know what was waiting in that ballroom. I arrived at the dock at 11:10 p.m. No fog this time. No Thorn. Just the black water lapping against the hull of the Celestia like it was whispering my name. The janitor's locker room was colder than usual. The lights barely worked, and I noticed something that made my blood freeze. Only one locker door was open. Number 7. Inside was another card, another set of rules. 1. You must enter the ballroom at exactly 11:33 p.m., not a minute sooner, not a minute later. 2. Walk directly to the center of the room. Do not look at the dancers. 3. A man in a white tuxedo may offer you a drink. Decline politely. 4. If the music stops and everyone turns to you, close your eyes and count to 60. 5. Should the captain appear on the balcony, leave immediately. He is not part of the dance. 6. Do not, under any circumstances, dance with anyone. The list made my chest tighten. Dancers? Music? This ship had been docked and derelict for years. What the hell was I about to walk into? I reached the ballroom doors at exactly 11:33 p.m. They were slightly ajar, just enough to reveal a sliver of flickering golden light from inside. I hesitated, then pushed them open. The ballroom wasn't abandoned, not tonight. Golden chandeliers swung overhead, casting elegant shadows across polished floors that shouldn't have been clean. The tables were set, the crystal glasses shimmered, and a band played a slow waltz on a stage I hadn't even known was there. And they were dancing. Dozens of people in 1920s attire spun and twirled in perfect rhythm across the floor. Men in dark suits, women in flapper dresses. all silent, smiling wide, eyes glassy. It was like walking into a vintage postcard, a dead one. I stepped inside and walked directly to the center, just like Rule 2 said. All around me, the dancers swirled, some close enough to brush my shoulders, but none acknowledged me. Until he arrived, a man in a white tuxedo, tall and expressionless, glided across the floor without moving his legs. He held out a crystal glass with some pale amber liquid inside. He didn't say anything, just held it there, waiting. I remembered Rule 3, decline politely, so I shook my head and whispered, "No, thank you." His mouth twisted upward into a thin smile. Then he vanished, just blinked out of existence like he'd never been there at all. The music kept playing until it didn't. At exactly midnight, the band froze. The bow of the violinist hovered mid-air. The pianist's hands were still. The entire room stopped, and every dancer turned to face me. Dozens of blank stares drilled into my skin. Their smiles vanished. I closed my eyes. 1, 2, 3. My hands trembled. I could hear shuffling, movement, whispering. 34, 35. A cold breath passed over my neck. 59, 60. I opened my eyes. The ballroom was empty. Completely empty. No dancers, no chandeliers, no music. Just dust, cobwebs, and the heavy smell of mildew and rot. But just as I turned to leave, I heard footsteps overhead, heavy ones, rhythmic. I looked up to the balcony, and there he was, the captain. But something was wrong. His uniform was burned, his skin bubbled and peeling, his hat missing. One eye a socket of black tar. He pointed directly at me and whispered something I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. Rule 5, leave immediately. I ran. Back in the janitor's closet, I slammed the door and collapsed against the wall, breathing hard. The envelope was already there on the floor, waiting. Thicker than before, and taped to the back of it was a small Polaroid photo of me, standing in the middle of the ballroom, surrounded by dancers. And in the photo, I was smiling. After the ballroom incident, I stopped going home. I stayed in my car in the parking lot next to the dock, engine off, doors locked, watching the silhouette of the Celestia sit like a rotting monument in the moonlight. Every time I blinked, I saw that photo again, me in the ballroom, smiling like I belonged there. But I didn't. I never had. And that version of me in the picture, that wasn't me. I'd decided that tonight would be my last shift. I'd collect the envelope. I'd follow the rules one last time. Then I'd ghost Thorne in the whole operation. No amount of money was worth becoming part of the ship's twisted history. But of course, the Silesia wasn't going to let me go that easy. At 10:55 p.m. my phone buzzed. This time, there wasn't a message, just a single attachment. A video. I hesitated before pressing play. The footage was grainy, black and white, and looked like it was captured on a security camera. It showed the hallway outside the janitor's closet. I could just make out the date and time. 5 minutes ago. In the frame was me, or something that looked like me, except this me wasn't standing still. It was pacing, scratching at the walls. Occasionally it turned to the camera and smiled wide, showing too many teeth. I dropped the phone. No, not again. When I reached the janitor's closet that night, the door was already ajar. Inside was a new envelope. This time, the rules weren't typed. They were handwritten, hastily, like someone had been in a hurry. And at the top, in smudged ink, it read, Deck 5 passenger quarters. 1. Use the side elevator. Do not take the stairs. 2. Room 508. Must remain locked. Do not knock. Do not speak through the door. 3. If a passenger asks for help, ask what year it is. If they hesitate, walk away. 4. Do not look into any mirrors on deck 5. 5. You may hear footsteps in room 512. That room no longer exists. 6. If you feel like you're being followed, you are. Do not run. Do not acknowledge it. 7. Return to the closet before 1:04 a.m. There was something about this list that made my stomach churn. It wasn't just rules anymore, it was warnings. The side elevator was barely functioning. The light inside was dim and flickering, and the buttons had no labels. I just pressed the one at the bottom and prayed. The elevator lurched down violently before settling with a ding that sounded like a scream cut short. The doors opened to a long, faded hallway lined with brass room numbers and mold-stained carpet. Deck 5. I felt it the second I stepped out. This wasn't like the other decks. This floor breathed. I swear I could feel the whole corridor expand and contract like lungs under my boots. Room 508 was 5 doors down on the right. The door was different from the others. Older, darker, with heavy claw marks raked across the wood. Something, or someone, had tried to get out. I kept walking, but as I passed it, I heard something. "Danny, you forgot me." The voice was soft, childlike, my sister's voice again. I closed my eyes, kept walking. Rule 2, do not knock, do not speak through the door. Room 512 was missing. Exactly as the rules had warned. Where it should have been, there was just a blank space of wall, smooth, seamless, like the ship had decided to erase it. But I heard the footsteps anyway, clicking slowly back and forth behind the non-existent door. Then knocking. Slow, deliberate. 1, 2, 3, then silence. I backed away slowly. At the end of the hallway, I saw someone standing by room 520. A woman. She looked soaked, like she'd just crawled from the river. Hair matted, clothes dripping. She stared at me and whispered, "Help me, please. I can't find my daughter." I remembered Rule 3. I asked, "What year is it?" She blinked, paused. Too long. Then her head twitched and she said, 1980. I turned and walked, fast. I tried not to look into any mirrors, but the ship had other ideas. Every doorknob, every frame of glass, tiny reflections caught my eye. And every time, my reflection moved just a little too slow, like it was lagging behind. One time, I caught it smiling when I wasn't. At 1:02 a.m., I was halfway back to the elevator when I felt it, that crawling, suffocating sensation along my neck and shoulders, like someone was right behind me. I didn't look. I didn't breathe. I just walked. Each footstep was mirrored by one behind me, half a beat off, just enough to drive me insane. When I reached the elevator and hit the button, I could feel it standing behind me, watching. The elevator took forever. When it finally dinged open, I stepped inside, and the doors barely closed before I heard it whisper, "See you tomorrow." Back in the janitor's closet, the envelope was there again, fatter than ever, and this time the photograph was of room 508. Door wide open, and something crouched just inside, staring at the camera with glowing white eyes. Waiting. After what happened on deck 5, I told myself I was done. I stood in the parking lot until the sun came up, just watching the ship. It looked completely lifeless in the daylight. No dancers, no passengers, no whispers through the walls, just rusted metal and chipped paint. A floating corpse. I even called Thorne's number, just to quit. But it rang once and cut off, no voicemail, no option to leave a message. And then, another envelope appeared, not in the janitor's closet this time, in the passenger seat of my car. I don't know how it got there. Inside was a note, shorter than usual. Pool deck tonight. Rules inside. $2,000. Don't be late. And the rules. They were different. They weren't typed. Not handwritten either. They were scrawled in smeared red ink across a crumpled napkin from the ship's old bar. 1. The pool is not filled with water. Do not call it that. 2. Bring the salt bucket from the utility closet. Do not spill any. 3. You may see children playing near the pool. They are not children. Do not speak to them. 4. At exactly 12:12 a.m., pour a full circle of salt around the diving board. Do not step inside it once closed. 5. If the lifeguard emerges, avert your gaze. He does not like being seen. 6. If it wakes up, leave immediately, even if that means jumping overboard. Napkins smelled like old blood. The Celestia's pool deck was located on deck 7. When I stepped out into the night air, I realized just how quiet it was. No gulls, no waves, no creaking hull, just silence. And that thing in the center of the deck they still dared to call a pool. But it wasn't water in there. It looked like oil, thick, black, sloshing in slow motion. It didn't reflect the moonlight. It swallowed it. The air smelled like rotting kelp and gasoline. I found the salt bucket just where the rule said, in the utility closet under the bleachers. Thick, chunky crystals like rock salt, but coarse and a dull gray. As I hauled it toward the diving board, I saw them. The kids, 3 of them, all maybe 7 or 8 years old. Boy and 2 girls, standing near the shallow end. Pale, soaked in brine, their skin raw and shriveled, like they'd been underwater for weeks. They giggled as they skipped around the pool, but it wasn't joyful. It was hungry, like they were waiting for something or someone. One of the girls looked up at me, her eyes completely white, and said, "Are you going to feed it, mister?" I didn't answer. I didn't even blink. Just kept dragging the salt. Rule 3. They are not children. At exactly 12:12 a.m., I completed the circle of salt around the diving board. Not a second late. The kids vanished. I didn't see them run or jump or fade. They just stopped existing, and the pool started to breathe. The surface rippled. Bubbles rose to the top. Something underneath was stirring. That's when I saw the lifeguard. He climbed out from the high tower, which should have collapsed years ago. He was tall, unnaturally tall. His skin stretched too tight over his bones. His red swimsuit had rotted off in pieces, and his face, God, his face, like leather stitched over a skull. He stood motionless, one arm raised with a whistle dangling from his fingers. His head slowly turned toward me, neck cracking with each degree. I looked down. Rule 5. Avert your gaze. Even in my peripheral vision, I could see him slowly climbing down the ladder, each footstep shaking the deck like thunder. I didn't move. Then I heard it. A gurgling roar from the pool. The black liquid convulsed, swirling violently in the deep end, like something massive was rising. Something older than the ship, something hungry. It breached the surface for half a second, just long enough for me to see one massive lidless eye staring straight at me. It wasn't an animal. It wasn't anything that belonged to Earth. And it was waking up. Rule 6. If it wakes up, leave immediately. I ran. Didn't look back. Didn't stop. Not even when I heard the lifeguard's whistle screech like a siren through the night. Not even when the deck began to tilt, like the whole ship was leading toward the pool, trying to feed me to the thing below. I don't remember how I got back to the janitor's closet. Only that my salt bucket was gone and the floor was covered in wet footprints too large to be mine. And on the bench, another envelope, but this one wasn't sealed. Just a single photo inside. It showed the pool from above, black, Still, quiet. But in the bottom corner was a blurry shape crawling up the side of the ship. Not a person, not quite, but I recognized the red whistle in its mouth. I didn't want to come back the next night. I had every intention of skipping my shift, blocking the number, and putting as many miles between me and the Celestia as humanly possible. But the phone rang. Not my cell. My landline. An old beige thing in the kitchen I hadn't touched since I moved in. It was unplugged, and it was still ringing. When I picked up, all I heard was static, until a low voice whispered, "Come back, Danny, you missed a call." Then it laughed. My voice laughing, before going dead. There was no escaping it. Back on the ship, the fog was thick. Thicker than I'd ever seen. I couldn't even see the deck as I walked the gangway. The Celestia groaned beneath me like it hated being disturbed. There was no envelope waiting in the janitor's closet this time, just an old rotary phone sitting on the bench. It wasn't plugged into anything. Taped to the receiver was a piece of yellow paper with 7 rules scrawled in bold black ink. 1. You will begin to hear phones ring across the ship. Do not answer them unless it's room 706. 2. If a voice asks, "Who is this?" do not respond. Hang up immediately. 3. Room 76 phone will ring at exactly 12:06 a.m. You must answer it. 4. If the voice on the other end starts crying, say, "You are not alone." 5. If it laughs, say nothing. Wait until it hangs up. 6. Do not let any phone ring more than 3 times. 7. After the call, leave a receiver off the hook in every room on deck 7. The receiver buzzed gently in my hand. I didn't even have time to think before the first phone rang. The sound echoed through the corridors, a shrill metallic cry. I ran. It was coming from room 709. I hesitated but followed rule 1. Not 706. Don't answer. By the time I reached the door, the phone was on its 3rd ring. I braced myself, waited for it to stop. It didn't. It rang a 4th time. Then silence. Then a knock from inside the room. Slow. Steady. I backed away. My hands were shaking. Then another phone started ringing. 2 doors down. Room 703. I sprinted to it, flung the door open. Phone on the desk ringing. Ring 1. Ring 2. I yanked it off the receiver. The ringing stopped, but the phone didn't go dead. Instead, a voice whispered, "Who is this?" I froze. Rule 2. Do not respond. I slammed the receiver down. My breathing was shallow, sweat pouring down my back. There were more rings now, coming from all around the deck. Phones screaming from behind sealed doors like alarms going off in a nightmare. At 12:06 a.m., the phone in room 76 rang. I didn't run this time. I walked, steady, focused. The door creaked open like it had been waiting. The room was old and dusty, the wallpaper peeling, the air thick with mildew. The phone sat alone on a desk by the window. Ring 1, ring 2, ring 3. I picked it up. Static buzzed through the speaker, then a soft, broken voice. It didn't say hello. It just started sobbing. Long, wrenching, gut-twisting sobs. I wanted to hang up, but I remembered the rule. If the voice cries, say, "You are not alone." I whispered the phrase into the receiver. The sobbing stopped. Then the voice whispered, "Thank you," and hung up. Relieved, I set the phone back down. Then I noticed something on the desk beneath it. A photograph. Black and white. Me again. But this time, I was on the ship's bridge, wearing a captain's uniform, my face older and smiling. In the reflection of the control panel behind me, there were dozens of blurred faces, all watching me, all smiling, too. I started working my way down the hallway, lifting each receiver off the hook like the final rule said, room by room, click by click. Each time the static got a little louder, a little more frantic. In room 711, when I picked up the phone, I heard breathing, fast, wet, animal-like. I dropped the receiver and backed out slowly. By the time I left the last room on deck 7, all the phones had gone quiet. The ship seemed to breathe out one long, rattling sigh of static. I returned to the janitor's closet, half expecting another envelope. Instead, the rotary phone was gone. In its place was a new object, a switchboard operator's headset, old, black, wires fraying. And on the wall above it, in red marker, "We'll call again soon." The next night felt different. Not colder, not louder, just expectant, like the ship was waiting for me. There was no fog this time, no wind. The air was stale and unmoving. As I stepped aboard, the scent of moldy popcorn and old velvet hit me like a wall. That was my first clue. The second was the flickering sign above the ballroom staircase. Tonight only midnight showing. And the third, when I entered the janitor's closet, was a red velvet playbill placed neatly on the bench with the title, Act 8. The theater must stay dark. Inside were the rules, scribbled in black fountain pen. 1. You are to enter the ship's theater on deck 2 at exactly 11:55 p.m. 2. Take a seat in the third row, 7th from the left. Do not choose another. 3. Do not speak, cough, or stand during the show. 4. If you see yourself on stage, do not react. 5. If any actor steps off stage, close your eyes and count to 30. 6. The audience may try to leave. You must not. 7. The show ends when the lights flicker twice. Then, and only then, may you exit. The playbill crackled like old leaves as I folded it and tucked it into my back pocket. I didn't want to go, but my feet were already carrying me down the creaking hallway toward deck 2. The ship's theater was grand once. Crimson curtains, gilded balconies, and rows of plush seats, wrapped in dust and shadow. The moment I stepped in, I noticed something else. The theater wasn't empty. The audience was already seated. Hundreds of them, every seat filled by passengers in faded formal wear, suits, ball gowns, gloves, all perfectly still. No movement, no breathing. Some had no faces, just smooth blank skin where eyes and mouths should have been. I counted silently as I made my way to my seat. Third row, 7th from the left. The moment I sat, the orchestra pit groaned, and something down there began to stir. At exactly midnight, the curtain rose. The stage lit up with a weak, pale light. 3 actors stepped forward, a man in a captain's uniform, a woman in a black gown, and me. I was dressed in my janitor uniform, just as I was now. I stood center stage, staring out across the sea of the dead. The version of me on stage looked terrified. When he spoke, it was my voice. "There are rules," he said, "always rules, but the ship makes them, not me." Then he started screaming. Real, blood-curdling terror. The captain put a hand on his shoulder and whispered something into his ear. Stagemaid stopped screaming and smiled, not a happy smile. The woman began to dance, spinning in jerky, unnatural movements, her bones cracking audibly with each turn. Then the lights above the stage dimmed, and one of the actors stepped off stage. The captain. He climbed down from the stage and began walking up the aisle between the rows of seats, straight toward me. Rule 5. If any actor steps off stage, close your eyes and count to 30. I clenched my eyes shut and started counting in my head. 1, 2, 3. His footsteps were slow, echoing. 10, 11, 12. They passed right beside me, paused. Something leaned down next to my ear. 17. 18, I felt cold breath, then a whisper, "You shouldn't have answered the phone." 25, 26, the floorboards beside me creaked as he walked away. 30, opened my eyes. The captain was gone. The audience was not. They were stirring now, fidgeting, shivering. Some were getting up, stepping into the aisles, wandering toward the exit doors. One brushed past me, her skin crackling like dry leaves, her mouth opened to speak, too wide, and she let out a low, wet moan. But I stayed seated. Rule 6, do not leave. The stage lights flickered once, then again. The curtain fell. Silence. Then the ship groaned. The audience stopped moving. Every figure froze again, like mannequins. I stood and walked to the exit, keeping my eyes straight ahead. Just before I stepped through the double doors, I turned back for one last look. The stage was empty, except for the version of me. He was sitting in the third row now, right where I had been, and he was smiling. In the janitor's closet, the playbill was gone. In its place was a theater mask, half comedy, half tragedy. The back had words burned into the wood, "Final show coming soon," and the lights in the closet flickered once. Then again, I didn't sleep after the theater night. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my own face staring back at me from the audience, smiling, like it had always been there. When I got up the next morning, the mask from the theater was gone. In its place, on my kitchen table, was a small envelope made of stiff navy paper. It smelled like sea salt and mold. Inside was a single sentence, typed in blocky font. "Tonight is your last shift. No rules, no instructions, just that." I should have felt relief. Instead, my stomach twisted into knots. Something deep down told me the ship wasn't going to let me leave. Not really. That night, when I arrived at the Celestia, everything was dark. No lights on deck, no fog, no creaking groans, just stillness. The gangway was extended like always, but the chain that usually guarded it was broken in two, rusted metal dangling like a snapped neck. As I stepped onto the deck, I noticed something scratched into the floorboards with something sharp, deep and violent. "He knows." The janitor's closet was open. No envelope, no phone, just the ship's captain's hat resting on the bench, and pinned above it in red ink on a warped clipboard were the final set of rules. Act 9, the final rules. 1. Do not go to the bridge. 2. Do not look at the water. If you hear splashing, keep walking. 3. The crew will walk the halls. Do not speak to them. They are looking for replacements. 4. You must reach the boiler room on deck 0 before 3:33 a.m. 5. You will be offered a choice. Choose wisely. 6. Do not let the captain see you leave. The moment I finished reading, the ship moaned, not from wind or sea. It sounded alive. I pocketed the rules and stepped out into the hallway. The lights flickered erratically. Entire corridors blinked in and out of darkness like faulty memories. My footsteps echoed as I made my way deeper into the belly of the ship. I passed by doors I hadn't seen before, ones that hadn't existed. Cabin 0, room 13. Hallways lined with mirrors that only reflected me after I had passed them. I saw crew now, men and women in crisp white uniforms. But their faces were too long. Their limbs moved like puppets. They twitched as they walked, and their eyes were pitched black, voids of hunger and something far worse. I pressed myself into the shadows and waited as they marched past. One of them stopped, tilted his head, sniffed the air like a hound, then moved on. Rule 2, do not look at the water, but the portholes were everywhere, and I could hear it. Splashing, not waves, Wet footsteps slapping against metal. Stairs coming up from below. I kept my eyes down, walking faster, following the signs marked boiler room. As I turned a corner, a figure blocked my path. A man in a captain's coat, tall, imposing. His back was to me. I stood frozen, praying he wouldn't turn around. After a long pause, he raised a gloved hand and pointed toward a rusted stairwell that led down into blackness. I didn't wait to question it. I ran. Deck Zero was nothing like the rest of the ship. It was made of rotted steel and wet pipes. The walls sweated, the floor sagged with every step. The air was hot, thick, and choked with smoke. I followed the path, heart pounding, until I saw it. A rusted door labeled Byler, scrawled with a chalky handprint. I checked my watch. 3:29 a.m. Inside, the room glowed red with furnace light. A figure sat beside the boiler, wearing a jumpsuit like mine. He didn't look up when I entered. He just gestured to the seat beside him. I sat. The air buzzed with pressure and heat. Finally, he spoke. His voice was my own. "You made it further than most." I didn't respond. "They'll offer you a choice," he said. "It's always the same." He reached into his coat and pulled out two objects, a rusted key and a ticket. The key was old, shaped like a skull. The ticket was crisp, glowing faintly gold, marked Cabin 7, permanent passenger. He held them out. "You can either leave or you can belong." I stared at them, heart hammering. "What happens if I take the key?" "You walk away, but you never forget. And the ticket." He smiled, and for a moment his face flickered. I saw hundreds of others, me, crew, strangers, passengers, flashing over his features like film-skipping frames. "You stay, forever. But you never remember." The ship shook around us. Somewhere far above, a loud crash echoed like a falling mast. It was 3:33. I reached forward and chose the key. The moment I touched it, the other version of me vanished. The boiler room door blew open with a deafening screech, and freezing air rushed in. I sprinted, up rusted stairs, past faceless crew who turned and reached for me. The ship howled now, every pipe and bolt groaning in protest. Shadows clawed at the walls. I burst into the main hallway, headed straight for the gangway. That's when I saw him. The captain. He stood in front of the exit, arms folded, hat shadowing his face. I skidded to a stop. Final rule: do not let the captain see you leave. He tilted his head, looked straight at me, and he smiled. The lights above exploded one by one as I ran, ducking behind walls, weaving through rooms, heart pounding. The captain didn't run. He didn't have to. Wherever I turned, he was already ahead of me, until I stopped trying to outrun him, and went down. I climbed into the lifeboat chute, a narrow, rust-covered tunnel behind a supply closet I'd seen in the early days. I slid down, metal scraping my sides. And then I hit water. Cold. Black. I surfaced, gasping. The Celestia loomed above me, silent once more. Lights off. Gangway retracted. The night was calm. I swam until I reached the dock, pulled myself up with trembling arms, and collapsed on the wooden planks, coughing seawater and blood. That was 3 nights ago. I haven't been back. But things aren't normal. I haven't seen another person in days, though the world continues like I'm still part of it. Phones don't ring anymore, but I hear them in my dreams. Sometimes when I pass a mirror, I don't see myself. Sometimes when I sleep, I wake up with sand in my sheets and salt on my skin. And just last night I found something on my pillow. A golden ticket. Cabin 7. Permanent passenger. My name printed at the top. No matter how many times I throw it away, It returns. Sometimes I find it in my coat pocket, sometimes in the fridge. Once, it was waiting for me in the shower. I don't know if I ever really left.